Chapter 7. Rock bottom was my resurrection. The day I broke down was the day I finally broke through. I didn't plan on falling apart. I didn't write it into my schedule, set a reminder on my phone, or pencil it neatly into a to-do list. It just happened. If I'm honest, it had been happening for years, just slower than I realized. Rock bottom isn't always some dramatic crash. Sometimes it's a slow leak. You barely notice it at first. A little drip here, a small crack there. You keep patching it with duct-taped pride, cheap distractions, fake smiles, and rehearsed lines like, "I'm fine, don't worry about me." But leaks have a way of winning. They don't stop until the whole thing caves in. I used to think rock bottom came with warning signs like flashing red lights and sirens in the distance. Something loud and undeniable that made you say, "Okay, I see it coming. Time to brace for impact." But mine didn't. Mine was quiet. It arrived like fog at dawn, creeping in so slowly that by the time I realized I couldn't see anything clearly, I was already lost inside it. At first, I blamed it on being tired. I've just been working too much. Then I blamed it on bad luck. It's just a rough week. Then I blamed it on everyone else. If people would stop stressing me out, I'd be fine. But deep down, I knew I was lying. It was the little things that gave me away. Sleeping in the same clothes for 2 days. Ignoring messages, not because I was too busy, but because I couldn't stand the thought of pretending to be okay one more time. Scrolling mindlessly on my phone until my eyes blurred, not because I cared about what I was looking at, but because I couldn't handle what I might see if I looked inside myself instead. It wasn't one big event. It was 1,000 small surrenders. And then came the moment. No loud music, no screaming match, no shattering glass, just me, sitting on the edge of my bed in the middle of the afternoon, staring at the floor. My hands were clasped together, but they weren't praying. My heart was beating, but it wasn't living. The air felt heavy, like even the oxygen had given up on me. I didn't want to die, but I didn't want to live like this either. I wasn't living at all. I was existing, and barely at that. That was my bottom. Not the job I lost, not the relationship that fell apart, not the apartment I had to leave. It was the moment I realized I had lost me. The eyes staring back at me in the mirror that day weren't mine. They were hollow. No spark, no fight. Just a deep, exhausting emptiness. I had spent so long performing for the world, pleasing, pretending, pushing through, that I had no idea who I was without the mask. And the scariest part, I wasn't sure I wanted to know. That's when I felt it. Not a scream, not a lightning bolt of inspiration, just a whisper. Something has to change. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't even convincing. But it was enough. Enough to make me brush my teeth after 2 days of not caring. Enough to make me reply to one message. Enough to wash one dish. Tiny acts of rebellion against the darkness. To anyone else, they were nothing. But to me, they were proof that I hadn't completely given up. If you've ever been in that place, you know, recovery doesn't come in one cinematic moment. It comes in fragments, broken pieces, one breath at a time. That day was the first piece, but it wouldn't be the last. Because soon, I was going to face something that would make this rock bottom feel like a warm-up. The first few days after my breakdown felt like walking through wet cement. Everything was heavy, my limbs, my thoughts, my voice. Even blinking felt like an effort. I wasn't used to feeling everything so clearly. Usually, I drowned my feelings in noise, music, TV, meaningless scrolling, constant movement. But now, even noise felt exhausting. Silence became my new enemy. I'd wake up, stare at the ceiling, and have to convince myself to move. Not because I was lazy, but because getting out of bed meant facing the world, and the world meant questions, responsibilities, and people who thought I was fine. So I started small. I didn't plan meals. I just made toast. I didn't clean the whole apartment. I just picked up one shirt. I didn't reply to every message. I just replied to one. At the time, those just ones didn't feel like victories. They felt pathetic, like I was trying to celebrate breathing, but I didn't understand yet. When you're at rock bottom, breathing is a victory. The hardest part wasn't what people saw. It was the thoughts no one could hear. You're pathetic. You'll never get back up. Look at you. This is who you really are. It's wild how your mind can turn into your own bully. The same brain that tells you to survive can also tell you you're not worth saving. I'd sit at the edge of my bed some nights, staring at the floor, arguing with myself. Get up. Why? For what? Because you're not done. You've been done for years. Sometimes I'd win the argument. Most times I didn't. People think the hardest part of recovery is saying no to the things that hurt you. It's not. The hardest part is saying yes to the things that help you, when you feel like you don't deserve them. One night, I forced myself to go outside. The sun had been down for hours, the air cool and sharp. I just stood there in the middle of the street, staring up at the stars. And for a moment, just a flicker, I felt small in a good way, like maybe my pain wasn't the whole universe, like maybe there was more. That tiny flicker of perspective didn't solve my problems, but it gave me something I hadn't felt in weeks: possibility. Still, I didn't fully trust it. I'd heard people talk about turning points before, but I knew better. You don't flip one switch and magically love life again. It's not one big breakthrough, it's 1,000 small ones. And some days, you have to fight for each one like your life depends on it. Because it does. Then came the phone call, a voice from my past, someone I hadn't spoken to in years. They said they had news, the kind of news that would either break me completely or force me to rise faster than I thought possible. I almost didn't answer. The phone had been ringing for a while before I picked it up, because lately every call felt like an intrusion. I didn't want to talk, didn't want to explain, didn't want to pretend I was okay. But something about the name flashing on the screen made my stomach knot. It wasn't someone I expected. It wasn't someone I was ready for. When I finally pressed accept, their voice hit me like cold water. It had been years. They skipped the small talk, went straight to it. I thought you should know. There's been a change. I won't repeat all the words right now, not because I forgot, but because some sentences don't just enter your life. They lodge themselves in you like shrapnel, and every time you think about them, you feel the sting all over again. What they told me wasn't simple bad news. It was foundational news, the kind that shifts the ground under your feet. The kind that makes you see just how fragile the life you've been clinging to really is. I remember hanging up and just sitting there, phone still in my hand, staring at the wall. The silence in the room wasn't the same as before. It wasn't the numb quiet of depression. It was a heavier silence, the kind that comes before a storm. I could feel something moving inside me. Not just fear, not just grief, something else. It was the moment I realized I didn't have the luxury of staying on the floor anymore. That's the thing about certain moments. They don't care how tired you are. They don't care that you've been broken for months. They demand something from you right now. And in that demand, you find out who you really are. I didn't feel ready. I didn't feel strong. But deep in my chest, under all the fatigue and self-doubt, I felt a spark. The whisper I'd heard before, "Something has to change," wasn't a whisper anymore. It was a pounding in my ribs. Get up. I stood, not because I felt like it, not because I knew exactly what to do next, but because the version of me that had been dying slowly in that apartment didn't get to make the decisions anymore. Something had shifted, and as I reached for my jacket and stepped toward the door, I knew what waited for me outside wasn't going to be easy. But maybe, just maybe, it was going to be the very thing that pulled me the rest of the way out.